Ukraine advances toward the EU as sanctions and military tensions grow on Russia. No siege in Pokrovsk. Ukraine maintains positions and halts Russian advances on the front line, while Russia is spreading fake news. China snubs Russia's oil giants after U.S. sanctions. Russia's total losses following the U.S. oil sanctions could reach up to $70 billion. According to Ukrainian intelligence data, the first detailed assessments of the impact of the U.S. restrictions confirmed that, due to the blockade of international companies' cooperation with Rosneft and Lukoil, the Russian Federation loses amount to at least $50 billion per year. Analysts note that considering the 19th EU sanctions package, which is estimated to impact up to $20 billion annually, Russia's total losses could reach $70 billion. This amounts to nearly half of Russia's total military spending. Additionally, in the first days following the U.S. decision on Russian oil companies, the price of Russian crude oil dropped sharply, as reported by Reuters. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has released a 3D diagram of the Russian Orion drone, along with information about 43 companies involved in its production. The Orion is the carrier for the new Russian S-8000 Banderol cruise missile. The Orion has a range of up to 250 kilometers, or up to 300 kilometers with a repeater, and a flight duration of up to 30 hours. Of the 43 Russian companies involved in the production of the Orion, 1/3 remain unaffected by sanctions from any country in the sanctioning coalition, according to the main intelligence directorate. This presents a serious risk of continued supply of critical components, further fueling the war against Ukraine.
Developments like Orion pose a threat not only to Ukraine, but to the civilized world as a whole. Technologies and components could be transferred to Russia's allies, particularly Iran and North Korea, which expands the risks of their military use in other regions. Companies supplying products to the Russian military-industrial complex must be cut off from international raw material supply chains and component bases. From the post of the Ukraine's main intelligence directorate on Telegram.
It's the 75th anniversary of the European Convention on Human Rights. Ukraine has called out Russia for its relentless violations in the ongoing war. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned Russia in truly horrific crimes, murders, torture, and forced deportations, all of which violate the fundamental human rights laid out in the Convention. Ukraine also highlighted the landmark ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, which officially holds Russia responsible for its systematic abuses in the occupied territories. Ukraine has reaffirmed its dedication to justice, freedom, and peace, alongside Europe's democratic nations in the fight for human dignity.
75 years ago, on November 4, 1950, the Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms was signed in Rome, the first international treaty that made human rights legally binding for states and became the foundation of the system for the protection of rights and freedoms in Europe. Ukraine remains committed to its obligations within the framework of the Convention, actively cooperates with the European Court of Human Rights, and consistently implements reforms in the field of human rights protection, even during wartime. We are convinced that ensuring justice and accountability for the aggressor is an integral part of the European legal order. Statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
At the European Court of Human Rights, there are 4 lawsuits filed by Ukraine against Russia. Unprecedented decisions have already been made in 2 of them. This was reported by Ukraine's Minister of Justice, German Galushenko, who met with the President of the European Court of Human Rights, Matthias Guillemar, in Strasbourg. The minister emphasized that the European Court of Human Rights is one of the global key institutions responsible for protecting human rights and freedoms. No country seeking EU membership has implemented reforms as extensive as Ukraine, as confirmed by the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas. According to her, this is especially important and valuable in the context of Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine. Kallas points out that despite the war, Kyiv continues to fulfill its duties and is making giant strides towards EU membership.
For Ukraine, membership or in the European Union can be a major security guarantee. No candidate country has ever implemented such sweeping reforms while at war. And this shows Ukraine's remarkable commitment to membership.
Unidentified drones, let's put it that way, were again spotted over a military base in Belgium. This is the second such incident in the past week alone, local media report. Residents of the town of Pier, near which the base is located, reported 6 drones airborne. Local police responded immediately and visually confirmed the presence of the drones in the air. Drones were also seen near the airports of Brussels and Liège, leading to the temporary suspension of operations. Many flights were diverted or cancelled. It is worth remembering that just last Sunday, authorities had already received reports of, also pretty much unidentified, drones over the Kleine Brobel air base in Belgium. The Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 900 enemy soldiers in the past 24 hours, as reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In addition, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 3 armored vehicles, 24 artillery systems, and 2 air defense systems. Since the start of the large-scale invasion, the Russian army has, as of today, lost a total of 1,145,670 soldiers. Also, 398 drones and 70 Russian military vehicles were destroyed. Russia, using artificial intelligence, is spreading fake news online about the situation in the Pokrovsk area. In particular, on the social media platform TikTok, Russian propaganda is massively posting videos claiming a mass surrender of Ukrainian soldiers in the Pokrovsk region. These images have been generated by AI and do not reflect reality in any way, but the Kremlin wants to see it. Most of these videos have text in foreign languages. While the real map you see on the screen now, the goal of the campaign is to create and maintain the impression amongst foreign users that Ukraine is losing and that military aid to it is pointless. In small, scattered groups, the Russian army keeps pushing forward with assaults in the area controlled by Ukraine's Kursk defense forces inside Russia. Spokesperson for the Kursk group of forces, Oleksandr Nevedomy, shared the update live on the Ukrainian national telethon. According to him, the intensity of Russian attacks has decreased compared to previous days, although occasional incursions continue. He specified that mercenaries from North Korea are not crossing the border into Ukraine and remain in the second echelon of Russian forces, far from the main front. Meanwhile, Ukrainian defenders are managing to hold isolated positions in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation, conducting reconnaissance missions and strengthening their defenses at strategic points to prevent enemy advances. The situation reflects a Russian attempt to maintain pressure, albeit with limited resources and in small groups, while Ukrainian forces continue to control key areas near the border. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the front lines, touring the main command post of the 414th Separate Brigade of Unmanned Attack Aviation Systems Ptahi Magyara, Magyar's birds, also known for deep and successful strikes into Russia. This brigade is responsible for the front sector near Pokrovsk. The president met with the unit commanders and received a report from the head of the Unmanned Systems Forces. Robert Browdy, amongst other things, reported on the increase in personnel and the preparation of new crews. Currently, the Unmanned Systems Forces make up 2% of the total Ukrainian armed forces, while being proudly responsible for 35% of all the enemy's destruction and casualties.
I am proud of what you do every day. The Unmanned Systems Forces, you as commanders and your personnel, are certainly one of the key branches of Ukraine's future army, and without a doubt a vital element of our modern troops. I thank you for preserving the lives of Ukraine and Ukrainians and for massively destroying the enemy. These two things, I believe, are very much related. That's why I wish you to destroy the enemy as much as possible, thereby preserving more lives of Ukrainians.
There is no blocking fence around Pokrovsk. according to the report from the Command of the East Troops. According to Ukrainian military sources, logistics in the city are complicated, though supply lines continue to function. In the last 24 hours, Russian forces made 27 attempts to displace Ukrainian units from their positions in the direction of Pokrovsk. However, the defense forces have maintained their front lines. Meanwhile, operations to search for and neutralize Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups are ongoing in the city. These operations involve unmanned systems operators, assault units, as well as fighters of the Special Operations Forces, the Military Police Service, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the main Intelligence Directorate. Intense fighting continues in Pokrovsk as of now. Chinese state-owned oil refining giants are refusing to cooperate with suppliers from Russia after the United States imposed sanctions on Rosneft, Lukoil, and their subsidiaries. This is reported by Bloomberg. The most affected was the popular ESPO oil grade, with nearly half of Russia's oil exports to China being reduced. More details on how relations between Washington and Beijing are changing will be provided by my colleague Larissa Petruk.
The relations between the United States and China have never been better. About this, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote on his social network X page. Hegseth assured that after the meeting between President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, he himself held, I quote, an equally positive meeting with his counterpart, China's Minister of National Defense. They discussed military cooperation between the countries.
Peace, stability, and good relations are the best path for our two great and strong countries. As President Trump said, his historic G2 meeting set the tone for everlasting peace and success for the U.S. and China. The Department of War will do the same. Peace through strength, mutual respect, and positive relations. Admiral Dong and I also agreed that we should set up military-to-military channels to deconflict and de-escalate any problems that arise. We have more meetings on that coming soon. Pete Hegseth, United States Secretary of Defense, on X.
Bloomberg, citing comments from Chinese government advisor David Daoki Lee, calls the Trump-Xi meeting historic because, in his opinion, the United States has allegedly recognized China as an equal partner in negotiations. The leaders last met during Trump's first presidential term in 2019. Since then, the dynamics of relations between the states have not been positive, and Donald Trump has several times declared, literally, a trade war on China. Now, agreements have been reached, and one of the key topics for future, as Lee states, serious negotiations will be Russia's war against Ukraine.
While details are still trickling out, the U.S. and China came away from the gathering with a broad agreement spanning tariffs and export controls on critical minerals. The two leaders also agreed to work together to get the war with Russia and Ukraine solved. According to Trump, the meeting stabilized ties, but both countries are expected to keep working to reduce dependence on each other in strategic areas, from a publication by Bloomberg.
Despite the warming of relations, Washington is cautious and plans to reduce dependence on China within the next 2 years. This concerns supplies of rare earth elements from the Celestial Empire, stated the U.S. Treasury Secretary.
And we're going to get out from under this sword that the Chinese have over us. We don't want to decouple from China, but we need to de-risk. They've shown themselves to be an unreliable partner in many areas. All the Western democracies, the Asian democracies, and India are also going to join us in this in trying to form our own supply chains.
Meanwhile, Russia is rapidly losing weight on the world stage and sinking deeper into economic dependence on China. The Federation has become a profitable market for Beijing to sell its goods. Economic relations between the countries are asymmetrical. China's share in Russian imports reached 35% by the end of 2024, while for China, Russia remains a secondary partner and a source of cheap raw materials.
One key example is the Zashelenskoye coal deposit in Transbaikalia. It is being developed by a joint venture between Oleg Deripaska's Russian OnPlus Group and China's Shenhua Group. Production is expected to last for 100 years, and the Russian government has granted the company tax breaks. Starting in 2027, 5 million tons of coal are planned to be transported to China each year. Despite promises, local residents did not get jobs. Key positions are occupied by Chinese specialists. Meanwhile, the company is cutting down cedar forests, and attempts to move the road further away from the protected area are being hampered by bureaucracy, from a statement on the website of Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
The dependence on Beijing is also visible in tourism, reports Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service. For example, Irkutsk Oblast is actively developing routes for Chinese visitors, and businessmen from the PRC are buying land and building hotels on the shores of Baikal, displacing local entrepreneurs. Notably, up to 2 million Chinese citizens already live in the Far East, reported by Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
Thank you for watching News Digest. Stay informed. See you next time.